Hi and welcome to Darvanalee Designs Studio. For those that don't know, my name's Nicole and today we are here for Block 9, Row 9 in DDs Row by Row Quilt-a-Long. The block that we're working on today is the Sawtooth block. We have some extra cutting instructions in there, so let's get started. Okay, so block 9, how exciting, our last row. All right, so if you haven't already, you need to head over to our website as usual, get your free download, all the instructions are there, but you will actually notice, and I'm not sure that I can get this without the reflection, so I do apologize, but when you get your download, you'll notice down the bottom we have a row here, the actual row, what it's supposed to look like. I've added that in because we're adding some extra colors into this one. So I'm going to work on the first block today, but you will notice that I've added in a green fabric as well. Cut your green fabric today because that way it'll be for the rest of the row. So you can see here we've got yellow and teal, and then the next block is teal and green, and then the one after that is green and yellow. So what we cut in our colored fabric today will actually do for your whole row, okay? Because we need to cut one large square of 6 1/4 inch, and then we're going to cross cut, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So head over, grab your free download, then come on back and we're going to get ready to start cutting and assembling our block. Now, this is called the Sawtooth Star, okay? You're also going to need a few extra things. Of course, you're going to need your iron and your ironing pad, a working sewing machine, your matching threads that you've been using throughout the quilt, your pins, and by now you should have some fork pins. If not, the link is down below for you where you can get those, along with some of my other favorite things as well. You're going to need a rotary cutter, and you're going to also need some rulers. Now, some rulers are only 6 inches. You are going to need a ruler that is 6 1/2 inches at minimum. Okay, so I tend to use this smaller one when I'm cutting blocks and all the rest of it, and it is a 12 inch by 6 1/2 inch, and I'll leave a link down below where you can get those rulers. There's many on the market, many different brands. They're all much of a muchness as long as they've got the marks on it for the 1/8 of an inch, then we're good to go. Okay, now I will apologize, as you can hear the birds are going off in the background again. I can't do anything about that, and my neighbor is also working on his car, so I will do my damnedest to not have that noise in there, as cut out as much as I can, so I do apologize for that. It can't be helped. He's actually had someone come to do it, and I need to film today because I'm busy for the rest of the week. All right, so once you've got your download and you've got all the things that you need, set all your stuff aside and cut your fabric out to the squares that you need. Now, what we're going to do is we are going to cross cut some fabric. So when I say cross cut, that is when we take a square and we're going to cut from corner to corner. So as you can see, there is a fair amount of triangles. I've already cut my white 6 1/2 inch square into triangles, and I'm going to show you how to do that with the colored ones, because the color ones will show up a little bit better on camera. All right, so after you've cut your 6 1/4 inch squares, you're also going to need a 5 1/2 inch square, and you can just set this aside for a moment because this is actually our center block on our star. And then you will also need 4 3-inch blocks, and you can set them aside as well because they're just the cornerstones for our star. So we're going to start with our red fabric. So you can see here I've already got some cut, and all we're going to do with our red fabric is, which is a 3 3/8 inch square. Okay, we're just going to cross cut that, and that's as easy as just placing that square down. Okay, and we're only going to cross cut this once. So when a pattern says cross cut or cross cut twice, I'm going to show you both of those things today. So a cross cut means that you're just going to cut it once, and some patterns are worded different. They may say cross cut once. Okay, So all I'm going to do is to put my square down. I'm going to lay my ruler from corner to corner, and then I'm going to cut. Now, if you are new to cross-cutting, by all means, flip your fabric over and mark it. You don't need to, but if you feel more confident doing that, by all means, do that. Okay, so once you've cut your red squares out, which you will need to cut 4 of them, you're going to cross-cut them, and that's going to give you 8 triangles. Now, those 8 triangles are the points of your star. Okay, so when you're choosing your fabric, make sure that that is a highly contrasting fabric from the rest of your fabrics. So a darker fabric. If you're using black and white, well, then the black would be the smaller squares. If you are using multicolors like mine, lay your colors together and see which one is playing as the dark, medium and light. Okay, and obviously you have your background fabric as well. All right, so the next one that we're going to cross cut is our colored fabric. Now this is a 6 1/4 inch square. Okay, I have pre-cut these all off camera, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to cross cut this twice. Now I haven't put that in the print off you, so you do need to if you get stuck and you're not sure what it means, I've actually put a note in there. Refer to the video for further cutting instructions for the colored fabrics. Okay, and also the white fabric as well. So all we're going to do now is we're going to cross cut this twice. So what that means is we're going to go from one corner to one corner, create 2 triangles, and leaving it where it is, we're going to cross cut the other way, and that's going to give us 4 triangles. And as I said earlier, the colored fabrics that I've listed here is enough to do the entire row. Okay, so I've laid my square down, and if I get a little bit, like if you're not used to doing it, I would suggest that you line it up. So one straight edge on this line here and one straight edge on this line here. And then just place your ruler on. Okay, and you can see these marks a little bit further afield of the yellow fabric. I'm making sure, because I can't quite see the fabric, I'm just making sure that I'm lining up in the corner on this box here, okay, and on this one here, and I know that my ruler is going to be straight. Another thing that I like to do as well is I will find a line on my mat. So I've got a 45-degree angle here, and I've just lined one of the inch marks on my ruler on that line, so I know my ruler is now straight. I've lined it up here, it's at this corner, it's at this corner, and it's at that corner, and it's lining up on my 45-degree, and I know that I can cut that. Now going the other way, I don't have that 45-degree angle, so I'm going to use my mat to line up. And then we just cross cut. Again, you can just mark the back of your fabric if you find that easier, and then you know where to cut that. All right, so without moving that, I can see my fabric a little bit better with this angle, and I can see that everything is lining up nicely, and so I am good to cut. Now, alternatively, you can get spinning mats and all the rest of it, and I will leave a link down below. I haven't used one for many years because I've got used to using my mat and my ruler and the marks and everything like that. So now you can see that I've got 4 of these triangles. Now for this block that I'm making right now, I only need 1 of them, so I can set these aside. And as I said, we're cutting our colored for the rest of the row in this first video. Okay, and then we're just going to do exactly the same for our teal. Okay, so placing that down, and going from corner to corner, and then lifting my, without moving my fabrics, I just lift my ruler. So I generally don't touch my fabrics at all. And there we go, we have 4 triangles. Okay, so take 3 of those and set them aside. And as you can see, I've already cut my green ones, and I'm going to set them aside as well. Let's take one of those. All right, So the block that we're making, okay, is the one that is pictured up the top. So that is the colors that we're doing today. As I said, I've got the row down there for you so you can see what it looks like. And I do apologize for the reflection, but I need studio lights. So yeah, you can see there that you've got your row. So you've got that to look at as you're making all of your blocks. Okay. All right, so now what we need to do that we've cut all our fabrics, we need to grab our design board. And as always, I'll link that up the top where you can see that. I've got threads all over the place. And we're going to just lay out our block. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to put my cornerstones in. And then I'm going to pop in my red ones. Now, of course, it might be a bit of a struggle to get it all on there because we haven't got our seams done. All right, so that is in place. And then we need to put our yellow and our teal in and our white. Okay. All right, so that is what our block is going to look like once it's assembled. The first part of our block that we are going to assemble is these components here. Okay, so we've got 4 components. And all we're going to do for that is we're just going to lay our red onto the triangle. So we've got our white triangle there. We take our red one, and it doesn't matter which side you start on, just whatever side you find easiest. And we're going to pop a pin in there. Okay, and I'm just going to leave it sitting there. And then I'm going to do the same over here. Okay, and I'm just lining up all my raw edges. Now, you will notice that this is actually hanging over a little bit. That's your 1/4 inch seam allowance, and we want that there. Okay, and as always, we always put the pin on the side that we are going to stitch. And then just set it down in place, and you're going to do that all the way around. Just one side at a time. And then what we'll do is we will head over to the sewing machine, and we're going to chain stitch these through. Those birds are actually quieter than what they were this morning. All right, so when we start sewing this, I'm actually going to just chain piece these through, and I'm going to stitch down this side using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, making sure that all my raw edges are lining up. And I may have to do a little bit of an adjustment at the machine, but I am going to basically just do, as I said, a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I'm going to do all 4 of those, and then I will be back. We'll press them, and then we'll put our next piece on. Okay, so we've got them all sewn together, and I'm just going to pop this out of the way, and we're going to press these. Now, I'm basically having my dark triangle on top, and I'm going to press out that way. Okay. And then I'm going to do the same for all the rest. And what that will do is put our fabric to the dark side, and that's what we want. All right, pop that out of the way and bring back our design board. And we're just going to place all our pieces back into position. That way we won't get confused where our pieces are supposed to go. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to get our other triangle, and we're going to line up our raw edges, pop a pin in, and we're going to stitch that down. Even though there's a lot of pieces to this block, it is actually quite a simple block to go together, and we are working with triangles. So as always, just be mindful that you don't stretch them when you're sewing them together. Just let them feed through the machine on their own, and that way you won't get any sort of distortion or anything of the triangles. And if you've just joined us into this block, don't forget to go back to the first couple of videos where I go into depth about prepping your fabrics and all that sort of stuff. Okay, everything you need to know about this quilt is back in those first 3 videos. All right, so I'm going to head over to the sewing machine again. I'm going to do exactly the same thing, chain piece them through. Okay, then we'll come back, we'll press them, and then we are up to assembling our rows. Just move that out of the way, bring your ironing pad back in, and we are going to press them now that they're sewn. Again, you want to have your dark fabric on top, so that is your triangles, and you're just going to roll that out. Okay, so now you can see why it's so important to have that little bit hanging off the top of the triangle. So this is our seam allowance that we've accounted for. So when we assemble the block, we won't lose the point, fingers crossed, that we won't lose the point off our triangle when we sew it into the block, to the completed block. So make sure that you have a 1/4 inch seam allowance here, and that you haven't made it too narrow. So it's very important that you line everything up and that you have that little bit hanging off at the top of the triangle. And then just place them down onto your design board where they've got to go. All right, so we can set the iron and the ironing pad aside for a second. We now have our points of our star all sewn together. The next part is sewing our rows together. So basically what we're going to do is just assemble each of our rows. So you can see here that we have 3. And it's quite obvious where everything's got to go when it's sitting on your design board. So that's why it's really good to have one of these. They're super simple to make too. So don't forget to check that video out. And all we're going to do is we're just going to place, starting with row 1, we're just going to place our square, and I'll just double check that I've got that the right way. Yes, I do. On top of this one here, and we're just going to place a pin in. Okay, now with this one here, we're just going to do exactly the same. We're just going to take our star points and place that. Now you're probably going to need 2 of your pins here. Okay, and we're just using our flathead pins at the moment. Okay, and just on the side that you're going to stitch, pop one in. Okay, and then our bottom one, we're just going to do the same as what we've done up the top. And then we'll head over to the sewing machine and sew that down. Chain piece them through. Just set your design board aside for a second. Bring back your iron and ironing pad. And your thread snips, we're just going to snip these apart, and then we are going to get rid of any long threads because they can get in the way at this point. And then we are just going to press that in place. We'll set the seam, as they say, and have that pressed open like so. Now I do actually have my seam going out to this block here, so we want to do that for the top one, and we also want to do that for the bottom one. So set your seam, okay, and then set that back over. And with this one here, we are going to actually set it a different way. We want our seam to go in ways, so we don't want it to be going the same as our top and bottom row. We want this one to go the opposite way. So basically what I'm going to do with this one is I am going to have it going to the center block. Okay, so you can see there that with my seam allowance I haven't lost the point. So we had that extra fabric at the top of the triangle, and I haven't lost my point just there. So that's very important. So when you're sewing these together, just make sure that when you're stitching, okay, and I'll bring it up a little bit closer. So I stitched on top here. So this is how I took it to the sewing machine, and you can see here, here's my junction from where I sewed the 2 red triangles on. So it's got like a cross junction just here. Okay, so you can see this stitching here is just above, okay, that cross junction. So that way, when this is opened out, you can see that I haven't taken the point off. So that's what you want to aim for when you're stitching. Have your needle in the down position. So if you need to, you can lift the presser foot up and make sure that you're going to go into the right place. So as you can see, there's the cross junction from where I've put the red triangles on. And here I've stitched the component on, and I've gone just above the cross junction just there. So you can, if you can just see that a little bit closer. All right, so that's what you want to aim for. All right, so place that back down on our design board, and we are back to now putting the end on each one. So again, we're just going to place them on. We'll pop a pin in, making sure everything is lining up correctly, and we've got all our raw edges are lining up nicely. You can adjust at the sewing machine if you have to. Sometimes when we take our pins out, things can move. All right, so head over to the sewing machine again and chain piece that through. Then we will be back to sewing our rows together. So once you've done that, just snip them apart. And then we're going to press them exactly the same as we did last time. All Right, there we go. Then pop that back over onto our design board. Now that we've got all that done, we're going to sew our rows together. So get any long threads that are going to be in the way out of the way. At this point, you can take your little ears off the top. Okay, it makes it a little bit easier to sew it together and manage it, and then not got things causing any bulk. So I just trim them off. I don't cut into the fabric or anything like that. But basically all we're going to do, like with any other block that we've done, we're going to take row 1, attach it to row 2, and then attach those to row 3. So the easiest way to do that is just to bring this up and lay that on top just there. Okay, and I like to just pin this center spot first so it doesn't move on me. And then I will line everything else up. Like so. Pop a pin in, then the same over on this side. And you can adjust at the sewing machine if you need to. Now, I've got those pins in there, but now I just want to make sure that these, and this is because these are quite long and they're moving around a little bit, I just want to make sure that my seams are now going to be lining up here. So this is where my fork pins come in place. So you can see there that they're lining up quite nicely. And I'm just going to grab my fork pins and I'm going to pop them in there, and then I know that those seams aren't going to move. Okay, and this is sort of what I do. Generally, I don't really worry about what's happening at this end, but when they're a little bit longer like this, I do sometimes find that they can move around and be a little bit cumbersome and make it hard to get everything to line up. So that's another way that you can actually do it. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to head over to the sewing machine and I'm going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I'm going to reverse at the beginning and at the end because we're into the final stages, and then that's going to hold everything together. Now, if you're not sure, you can double check that your seams are nesting up, and I can see that they are just by flicking them over, and if I pull this back, I can see that they're lining up with my center block as well. All right, so I'm going to head over to the sewing machine and I'm going to do that for that one. But before I go, I'm actually going to attach this bottom one to make it super easy, and then when we come back, it's all done. Now that that is all stitched together, cut off your threads, pop your pins back into their pin cushion. There was a lot of them. Get rid of all our longer threads, and we're going to give it one final press. So I'm just setting the seams here, and then I'm just going to roll this one back this way. Bring that down a little bit, and then roll this one back this way. All right, and that is our little Sawtooth Star all done. Pop it over here so you can see it a little bit better. All right, that's it. It's done. It's that simple. All right, so you can see that you've got another, the points are in a little bit. They are 1/4 inch in. So when we go to sew these, all our blocks together, you won't lose your points off your red down the bottom here. Okay, so just be very mindful of that. When you're trimming up, do not trim up to the points or anything. You need to make sure that you've got a 1/4 inch there. If you don't have quite 1/4 inch, that's okay. We can work that out. All right, so now that that's done, you're going to continue on and make another 5 blocks. Don't forget that we've already cut our yellow and our green and teal fabrics. Okay, so you've already got those triangles set aside. We cut them this time. That way you're ready for the rest of the block. As I said, there are 6 blocks in total, and that is a DDs Sawtooth Star. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I do hope that you enjoyed making DDs Sawtooth block. This was the final block in our row by row. So once you've done this, in a couple of weeks' time, we'll have the assembly of the quilt up, and so make all of your rows and getting ready to join them together. We're going to put our final border on, and then our quilt top will be done. Alright, so as I said, thank you so much for joining me today, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give us a thumbs up down below, and if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and the little bell icon beside it, and then that way you won't miss out on any future posts. As always, the tip jar is rolling across the screen right now, and you can drop me a tip in the tip jar. I do appreciate that, and all those funds go back towards the channel, such as giveaways and all that sort of stuff. Alright, well that's it from me. I'll see you again in a couple of weeks for the final assembly, and I'll see you next week for another great sewing tutorial. Have a great week everybody, stay safe, and I'll see you all again then. Bye for now.